Hello, how's everyone doing? I hope everyone's doing okay today. Before we start this video, I want to let you know I posted a poll for next video's topic in the community tab, so I'd appreciate it if you check it out and share your inputs on that. Now on to this video's topic. I wanted to make a video discussing various gaming related things for quite some time. This particular video you're watching involves one of them. It has been sitting there in my draft, and I guess now is an appropriate time to finally finish it, considering that one of my recent favorite games has shut down or will shut down. So yeah, what I want to do in this video is look into some of the games I've played that have closed down and see if they have anything in common. Perhaps a notable shared downward spiral pattern. Is low revenue the common denominator between all of them? Believe it or not, I had Revived Witch among the list of those games before the official shutdown announcement. Why? I don't know, I haven't reached that part yet. I'm still at the intro. So, allow me to start with this game first. Symponica Grand Maestro. One of the few games on this list that were actually removed from the App Store. This one is probably the first game that I actually cared about it disappearing and noticed when it did, because typically very few games stay in my phone longer than a couple weeks. Add to that this game was a story-driven, single-player focused rhythm game with no online modes or anything of that sort, so it disappearing seemed like it came out of nowhere. It was one of the best rhythm games I've played, and I've played quite a few. All the playable songs were classical songs, and I'd imagine that helped widen its target audience. The game implemented several gestures during those songs' gameplay, so it's not just tap faster, which was probably groundbreaking at that time, judging by the release date of this game. The story, however, was not as noteworthy. It was episodic with a visual novel storytelling style, and from what I recall, it was just as needlessly convoluted as any other game story published by Square Enix. I think with this game there were two main issues which contributed to the outcome of it being discontinued. The first one is that at that time rhythm games had a niche audience. The second one is that this was a single player game in a mostly free online multiplayer games market, because mind you, the story isn't fully free. At some points you have to pay to unlock the next episode of the story, which would then subsequently unlock new playable songs. Square Enix is notorious for considering successful games to be failure if they don't make pachinko games amount of revenue back. But in all fairness, I think this game didn't earn even an average amount of revenue back. I mean, there are hardly any footage of it out there. It's safe to assume that not many people played it. So I do agree that with this game it was probably because they didn't earn enough, and perhaps the single player element further tanked it. Or is there another angle here I'm missing? The next game on the list is one that was supposedly made by a small team, Pirates Power. The exterior presentation of the game may lead you to think that it's a simple game, but it actually has a lot going on with it. For starters, it has a town and resources management system, story campaign, player versus player mode, and of course, gacha mechanics, because why not? Its main gameplay is in the form of a simplified ships battles, and how the gacha element is integrated into it is when it comes to the boat spars you can get, as well as the special crew members. And this is where the problem arises. You see, all the contents in the game are tightly intertwined. This is how it goes. Boats are tied to new characters, and new characters add to the story by either continuing it or resulting in a new island being available to explore. So if the devs stop adding new characters, everything else stops. And that's exactly what happened here. This is not a first for this game's developer. Whenever that developer's company releases a new game, the updates for the previous game either dry up or completely stop. So I think the reason behind shelving this one is the typical new indie games company reason, i.e. they just wanted to move to a different project. What's your take on this one? The following game was featured prominently in Apple's App Store due to its receiving an Editor's Choice Award, the Trail Frontier Challenge. A well-deserved award if you ask me, because for better or worse, the gameplay loop was beyond addictive. It's a mixture of exploration, crafting, and resource management. And with an endurance mechanic applying to nearly everything in the game, including the character you control actually, it can get quite hectic in a fun and engaging way. There's also a town system in this game. You can start a town and be the mayor there, or you could choose to be a resident in someone else's town, living next to other players' houses, and working towards a common goal. This game has a Steam version. I can speak on that version, but I don't trust it. First of all, it supports with the mobile one, the one that's free, and also the very one that seemingly has been abandoned by the developers. And yeah, in the original version, aka the mobile version, the map is not procedurally generated, so it's a dead-end game, quite literally. One would think that if a game was successful enough to the point of having a PC port, then the devs are not earning financially. So again, most likely, another game where the devs gave up on it. Now, I'll try to talk about the next game without getting in my feelings. A3. Sometimes I download games for their art. This was the case here. The game's art looked great and I expected some level of polish, visually speaking, but that's about it. Going into it, I had the lowest expectation for everything else because it was a visual novel game. Then I played the game and read its story. It's easily one of the best visual novels I've ever read. Whoever the writers were, they did their thing. A lot of work and thought clearly went into this game. There are a lot of interesting stories to read beside the main story, like in all the events and all the unlockable cards. And every now and then, the devs add new feature to the events gameplay. So changes happen not just with the story, but the gameplay as well. To a certain degree, to be honest. Okay, here's the short version of the story. The heroine's father is a theater director and owner. He mysteriously disappears and now she does the actors recruiting and directs plays in his place. There are actually real-life live performances of the plays in the game that one can actually go to. But unfortunately, the international version of the game wasn't a success story and was shut down, so those plays stayed local. Anyhow, the reason why the international version of the game didn't do so well is not as easy to pick out as in the previously mentioned games. There are many possibilities here, such as the game being too generous with its in-game currency. The players, although a high number were playing, may not have been as many as the ones for the original. But one thing for sure was a major factor is the devs rushing event in order to catch up to the original game, the one that came out 2 years ago, because that's reasonable. This led to hardly any breaks between events. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking. They messed it up. I love this game so much, I still kept both versions of it on my phone, despite one of them being no longer playable due to its server shutting down. This will probably what I'll do with the next game as well. Yet another heart-wrenching, closed down game. Revive Twitch. Let's see what I originally wrote down, then I guess I'll share my thoughts, knowing what I know now. Comparatively with other games I've played, Revive Twitch's events are probably the least polished. They feel like they're not finished, but I loved everything else. The 3-team setup is perfect in my opinion. I think it is what makes the game one of the best fast-paced, real-time combat RPGs. But as a mobile role-playing game casting its net on the largest audience it can get, it's bound to give less than ideal experience. For RPG fans, the battles are not complex enough, and for casual players, there are one too many difficulty spikes and punishing bosses. If things get revamped and the devs improve certain aspects of the game, maybe even getting more devs to work on it, the game may be an actual hidden gem, but as it is, it feels like too many good ideas that aren't given the proper care they deserve. That might have been harsh. For those who are wondering, I think my goal here was to use previous games as a cautionary tale for Revive Twitch. Yeah. I think Revive Twitch teams are talented, but maybe they're not well versed when it comes to making a game. From the little I could find about them, the studio seemed to have been recently formed. It's plausible that things turned out the way they did because of that, but certainly it does not excuse it, in my humble opinion. Like so many MMO YouTubers have said, if this is your first game project as a game developer, don't go for an MMO, don't bite more than you can chew. Same applies here because a multiplayer RPG game is just as ambitious as an MMO. That's kinda all I have to say. I'm sorry if you were expecting the other video, the one I did the poll on. I was already working on this video and figured it kind of feels more like a closure to, Revive Twitch. So I wanted to get that out before moving on to the next thing. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about all of this. Also, feel free to share like other closed down games in the comments. I'd be interested to read that. And again, thanks for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Until the next video.